I muted myself. Sound guy turns me on and then I got myself muted. That does not help him out at all. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Happy New Year. I guess it's 2022. Someone told me. That's great. I woke up yesterday and I thought I was over the cold / whatever. So I'm just going to warn you, I am a little congested. I may cough a little bit. So like I said, I may cough a little bit. Sorry. I've been battling this for about 3 weeks and it just keeps coming back. But some of the young men were handing out question and answer cards, so hopefully you guys have that. We will have a question and answer session, I believe it's our last session of this 9 a.m. And so if you have any questions as you go along, please fill those out. There's a box out on the table that you can drop those in, and we will do our best to answer those. Any really, really hard ones, I'm going to defer to Craig. So you're welcome, buddy. Anyways, this is the week 3 of Kids in Tech. What's that? Oh, so I swear I hear something. I'm losing my mind. This could be a fun day. All the fun medicine in my body right now. So anyways, this is the 3rd week of Kids in Tech. And so I hope you guys really did enjoy your Christmas. And so the last several weeks of class, Craig's been going over some different types of things, and he's kind of been doing an introduction to technology. He did the timeline of tech. He talked about the different revolutions that we've experienced over the last several 100 years, and we talked about that we're living in the digital revolution right now. And we see that technology is everywhere. We're not going to get away from it. There's no way to get away from it. I'm sure most of you, when you go to work, you have to use your technology, and you have to use it on a regular basis. But we see that technology also, it amplifies everything. And so everything that we do seems to be amplified because of technology, because we either have to use it or some of us, not me. We're going to talk about social media next week, and I've learned to hate social media, and so I'm going to do my best not to be frustrated next week. But it seems like everything we do, we got to post and share with everybody, so everybody knows everything about our lives, and technology just continues to be amplified in and through our lives. And so then last week we talked about how technology shapes us. It shapes us physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. And Craig talked about, and hopefully you guys remember, that as parents of kids who are growing up in this world of technology, we need to help guide and help our kids, guide and guard our kids. With the ever-growing use of technology, we need to truly train up our children and help them and guide them through this crazy world, because most of our kids, they're just used to it. Our kids are used to technology. They think, oh, social media. I mean, everybody uses it. This is the way life should be. They don't remember whenever they had to whip out the old Nokia cell phone that didn't even have color on it. They don't remember any of that. They don't know life without social media. And so we need to help them and guide them through all of this stuff. And so the next several weeks, for like the next 5 weeks, we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. We're going to be going over a lot of information, and we're going to be talking about smartphones today. We're going to be talking about social media. We'll talk about TV and media. We're going to talk about pornography and then gaming and addiction. It will be in 5 weeks. And so there's going to be a lot of information. And I say all that just so you guys kind of know where we're heading in the next several weeks. But also, like I said, there's a ton of information that's going to be coming your way. And we do understand that this might be a little overwhelming for you. We understand that as we start going through this, and as we start reading different statistics, and as we start reading some of the effects and different things that technology can cause, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, I just had a kid, or my kid's not that old, but oh my God, he's going to be growing up in this world. Or maybe you already have kids that are in this world and have screens, and you're going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe all of this. I just want to encourage you, we are here to help. If you begin to feel overwhelmed, just realize maybe that's God nudging you and making you think, well, okay, how should I be helping my kids? How should I be helping myself navigate through technology? But I want to encourage you, we're here to help. Me and Craig obviously are doing this class. We got some other plans moving forward, and you guys do have counselors in Kids First. You have counselors in Ignite and Extreme who want to help you navigate through all of this in the crazy world of technology. And so, as I said, this next few weeks, lots of information, which means there's probably not going to be a ton of different verses that we're going to go through. But as you look down, you may say, well, the next thing in our study sheet is verses. And so there are some things that I kind of would like to just go over and remind us of I want you guys to kind of, if you can, just keep these verses and what we're going to talk about for a brief period in mind. Because everything that we're going to talk about with these verses, we need to keep in mind as we navigate this world of technology, because everything with technology has an effect on how we think. It affects what we see. It affects how we act. And so I want us to look at some key reminders from the Word of God. And so the first thing I do want to say is I want us to forget about what the world says about technology. Like, I know what the world says about technology. It's great. It makes everything better. Craig talked about all the things that Elon Musk and all those weird guys are doing. Like, it's going to make our world great. We can put some things in our mind and we can talk telepathically and all these weird things that years ago we would have thought there's no possible way, but somehow these guys are working on it. And so the world says technology is great. The world says give your kids phones. It occupies them. It's actually not that bad for them. Just give them a phone, put them in the corner, and you can get some peace and quiet. The world says social media is great. The world says all of this stuff is just fine, but we have to remember what God says about some of this stuff and how we're supposed to guard our eyes and guard our mind and stuff that we're going to talk about. So I believe the Bible says, let God be true and every man a liar. So we need to remember, whenever we're going through this, just please remember these verses that we're going to talk about. So the first thing that we need to remember is guard our eyes. Psalms 101:3 says, I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me. So David says, listen, I'm not going to set any wicked thing before my eyes. And let me just say that a smartphone necessarily isn't wicked. But let me tell you, a lot of the things on it can be very wicked. And so we just have to make sure that we are very careful what we're putting in front of our eyes. We have to be very careful of what our kids are putting in front of their eyes. Like social media, we're going to talk about next week. There's a lot of crazy things out there on social media. There's a lot of apps out there that your kids can get into a lot of trouble. And what they see, it can't be unseen. Job 31:1 says, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I look upon a maid? And so Job, if you notice, he said, I made a covenant with my eyes. He's very intentional. Job's very intentional about what he looks at. And I think that's what we all need to do. We all need to be very intentional. It's not just our kids, it's us as adults as well. We're going to talk about pornography, and that's kind of the easy thing to talk about. But listen, guys in the room, are you very intentional about what you look at? Are you like Job? And sadly, as we're going to talk about this, you know what? It's not just a guy problem anymore. More and more, there are more and more women who are becoming addicted to pornography. But we need to be like Job and say, listen, I'm not going to set any wicked thing before mine eyes. And your phones are interesting things, because you could be looking through social media with the purest of intentions, and bam, there it is. There's something, that was a theme at camp. Well, I'm on social media and all of a sudden there's something inappropriate. Well, what do? You made a covenant with your eyes. You get out of there. And so it has to be intentional, guys. And why does it have to be intentional? Because Lamentations 3:51 says, mine eye affecteth my heart because of all the daughters of my city. You can't unsee what you see. Let's switch over to Google and start Googling. Let's figure some of this stuff out, like what's going on. It doesn't matter, and I find myself stressed, and I found myself looking at things that aren't true. And guys, God has called us to guard our minds. And it's a really hard thing to do if our faces are in this all the time. And the last thing I'll remind us is that we need to guard against our enemy. 1 Peter 5:8 says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. And I get we know this verse. I get that this is a popular verse, and this is a 9 a.m. at First Baptist Church, and many of you probably have that memorized. But can I remind you, Satan is a roaring lion, and he wants to devour all of us, and he certainly wants to devour your kids. I promise you this, Satan doesn't care about your kids. He just wants to get them distracted and away from the Lord. And he's going to do anything he can to do that. And me and Craig and many of your other leaders, you know what we believe? We believe that the one way he's doing that is through technology. It's one of the biggest influences we have. And the crazy thing is we give our kids phones at such a young age. We'll give our kids phones, and this is where I might make a few people upset, but truly, we give our kids phones at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And somehow we're so naive to think that the world's not going to creep in. You don't think that if you give your kid a phone at such a young age that Satan's not going to find opportunities? I mean, all the stuff that's out there, guys. If you don't know what's out there, well, you're going to learn through this class. But all the stuff's out there, and we give our kids a phone at such a young age. And all the while, the Bible's telling us, man, you got to be sober, you got to be vigilant. We should be guarding against this kind of stuff. And so I'm not here to tell you when to give your kid a phone, but I will suggest, man, you guys, we got to be careful. And so as we go through the next few weeks, just want to encourage you again, remember those things. Remember, we do have an enemy. Remember, he is fighting against us, and he hates our kids. And he's going to use technology. He's going to use this phone right here to get into your kids' lives and affect their mind, affect their heart, and affect their hearts. And so I believe that this year, the Lord made this very apparent to me and Craig. The reason that, me and Craig were kind of throwing around doing a series like this, and it was one of those things we talked about. And it's like, it'd be good to do this. But this year, God made it very apparent to me and Craig that we needed to do a class on this. And one of the reasons is because we went to camp. And so each year we go to camp, and God does amazing things, and 18 people got saved this year at camp, and camp's awesome. Lives are changed. And so we come back and everybody's excited. But I'm going to give you a little glimpse into camp from my perspective and a few of your other counselors. And so let me just say, as I go through this story, changes will be made at camp this year. Technology will be limited, and we'll get you more information on that. You're welcome, kids. We're changing some things up. We're going to stack the odds in the counselor's favor big time this year. And the reason is this, is in a week's time, so many things happened at camp, and they were all related to smartphones. Joel's smiling because he knows what's coming. And the crazy thing is almost all of it happened in middle school. And it became very apparent that, man, the attack is on not just our high schoolers, it's our middle schoolers. We had an entire cabin that we almost had to send home. An entire cabin we almost had to send home. They were all friends, all went to school together, they all played sports together, everything. They were fighting with each other, about ready to throw down. And the realization is, as you just dug in, is they just were disrespectful, and they were always on their phones. I mean, the battle was, go to bed. No, I got my phones. Go to bed. No, I got my phones. I want my phones. They finally took the phones away, and the whole battle, the entire week, I felt so bad because Nate Gott's not here. I told him, you're going to be in middle school. It's going to be the easiest week you've ever had. It's going to be fun. Oh, poor Nate Gott. I got to make up for it this year. I think he's coming. I think I talked him back into it. He's going to have like the easiest cabin ever. I got to figure out how to do that. But poor Nate Gott, it was just a battle. He said, man, I can't believe it. These kids won't even get off their phone. I was like, well, take it away. We're taking them away this year, guys. Sorry, kids. But then we even found that there was a girl that was looking at inappropriate things on her phone, and that's as far as I'll go into that one. That was a first, but that was a crazy experience. But then we had this one kid that we had to deal with, that he started at the week out with just saying some very weird things and acting very weird and kind of saying some inappropriate things to some of our girl counselors. And we had a few conversations with him, and long story short, they caught him on his phone looking at some stuff. And guys, let me tell you, as a 12-year-old, this kid was looking at stuff that I won't even say out loud because it's so awkward. It was hardcore stuff. And so this kid is clearly being affected by all the stuff that he was just looking at, and it was all on his phone. And so it was actually heartbreaking. We got the parents involved. We had some long conversations with him, and you realize that this kid's mind was just warped. I'm sure there may be more stuff going on behind the scenes, but man, this kid was looking at stuff that, as a 12-year-old, I couldn't even believe it. I truly, I don't say this for a fact, I felt dirty just looking at some of the history that was on his phone. And it was crazy. And praise the Lord that his counselor was able to help and walk him through this. But man, it was insane. And this is all going on. I mean, most people think camp is great, and it is. It's an amazing time, but this is all going on in the background. But every year, you know what we deal with in middle school and high school? Every year, and especially this year, it seemed to be another theme as we deal with kids looking at porn. And you know where they're always looking at porn? Parents. Let me just tell you. Take your kids' phones away from them when they go to the bathroom and when they go to bed. I know that's awkward. But man, every single time it's in the bathroom on their phone or it's in the bedroom on their phone. Almost every time. 99% of the time. But that's the theme. Kids are looking on their phone and they're struggling. And it's not just searching on the web now. Now it's social media. They're like, well, you know, we're strolling it. And if you click on one, then your phone, you know how it is. All the algorithms out there. Once you click on a few things, your phone knows what you want. And let me tell you something. As you click on that, you know, scantily clad lady, you know what your phone's not going to do? Stop sending those things, not having those things pop up. And those pictures aren't going to get better, and your kids know that. And that's the battles that we face at camp. And it's all, listen guys, it's all this. It's all on here. And our kids are just listening to this, and they're seeing it, and it's affecting them. And so as your kid's youth pastor, please, no phones in bed. Like, that should just be a guarantee, like, hey, put your phone, I'll take your phone, whatever. I don't know. Sorry, kids, if you take your phone to bed, but listen, it just shouldn't happen. And so that would, not only would it help your kids, it would help you, and it would really help your youth counselors. And we'd appreciate that. But another thing that's been going on as I've been studying this, you know what, parents, they've been doing a lot of studies, and they found out that parents think raising their kids is harder than ever before, and the reason is because of technology. It's distracting. It's gotten to the point where if you tell your kids, hey, get off the screen, they just start to fight with you. Imagine for some people if you said, hey, I'm going to take your phone away for a week. Imagine that conversation with your teenager. If you say, like, we use that as a punishment if they do something really, really bad. But it's become such a battle that it's causing so many problems, and it's one of the hardest things that parents are starting to say, dealing with their kids. And so let's just consider how we're going to handle this, and we're finally going to jump into just kind of starting to talk about smartphones. Sorry, I'm just looking through my notes here. So, you know, whenever we had smartphones, I remember when I was in school and I made reference to the Nokia. Anybody have the little Nokia? Yes. I was so excited with that Nokia because if I had to wait somewhere, I could play that little worm game. And you go through and you hit the little circle. And so, like, the younger kids in the room was like, what are you even talking about? You older people know. It was exciting. It wasn't color. It wasn't anything. And you could play that game. There was no internet. There was no social media. There was no streaming. You weren't popping up YouTube because there was no YouTube. Imagine that, kids. And so as you know, you're using that, it was great. And then suddenly, man, you got the colored phone. It's like, wow, this is great. Could it get better? And then all of a sudden there's touch screens. I think it was 2007, Apple came out with the first Apple phone. And so the first iPhone came out. And so all of a sudden we've went from 2007, like before that, I didn't even know what getting on the internet with my phone was, to now we just take it all for granted. Now, can you imagine not living without your phone? Can you imagine not being able to figure out whatever you wanted anytime you wanted? You just Google it. My wife laughs at me all the time. We'll be talking and we'll be like, man, I wonder what that is. Well, I can tell you. I just Google it. You can find anything out. And technology has moved at such a rapid pace, we can have anything we want if you can afford it whenever you want it. I mean, Amazon will drop it off in your door sometimes the next day. And so we're to the point now where we just take it for granted. I mean, have you just thought about how crazy it is that you can know anything you want just by Googling it? But we have to remember that, you know what? Just because you can have anything you want and it's kind of a cool thing, it's not a great thing sometimes, is it? Because you can have anything you want, any type of pornography you want. You know, when I was in high school, I had to work for it. You know, you had to know somebody. You had to know somebody who had a magazine, or you had to like get desperate, maybe the JCPenney catalog. And so like that's just how it was. You really had to work to try to find something. But you know what? You don't have to work anymore. Your kids don't have to work anymore. They just Google something and Google whatever they want. They just pop it up. You can find whatever you want. You can find it through web browsers. You can find it through social media. Their friends can send it to them. Their boyfriends or girlfriends can text it to them. It's just the world we live in, and it's all through our phone. And so I understand that, like I said, there is a battle for the cell phone. I understand that if you tell your kids, man, I'm taking your phone away from you at night, or I'm taking your phone away from you for a period of time, and start helping your kids navigate through this, that it's going to be a battle. But man, it's worth it, because this idea of getting anything you want, anytime you want, is kind of a cool concept until you realize that there's a lot of bad, negative things about that. Cell phones alone are changing our kids every single day. And through their phone, our kids are exposed. Think about this. They're exposed to so much that before they wouldn't have been able to. Like I said, pornography. Could you be exposed to porn? Absolutely. But you had to try a lot harder. Violence. Think about all the violence that our kids can watch on YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, on and on and on. They just pull it up whenever they want. They can pull it up in class if they want to. Think about all the stuff that they can listen to. I mean, it is crazy to me. You hop on Spotify, and if you just look at Spotify and you look at the top 40 songs, I think you can look at the top 40 songs in the world. Guess what? Almost every one of them have that little E beside it. It's explicit. And they're talking about drugs, alcohol, sex, technology, and we're going to start helping our kids. You know what we need to do? We need to also be the people and parents who are also stepping away from our screens and helping ourselves with maybe the addiction that we have that we didn't realize. And so now we're going to talk about some statistics. Now, I'm kind of a nerd. I have a computer science degree, and so nerd is just all up in me. And so I love statistics. And so I'm going to give you some. Don't tune me out here, because as you begin to read through these statistics, you begin to learn a lot of how much we actually use our smartphones and how crazy it actually is of a problem with an everyday use of smartphones. And so I got some of these stats from places like, it's called techjourney.net, financesonline.com had some of these statistics, dataportal.com or datareportal.com has a lot of interesting statistics, and Statista is actually a really interesting site that I got lost in a few days. It's got a ton of different statistics on a bunch of different stuff. But like I said, as we go through this, please do not tune me out, because there's a lot of things you're going to realize through here that might actually surprise you, because they surprised me. And just from the offset, I've realized I'm very convicted, like I said a couple minutes ago. Like, I never realized truly how much my phone was a daily part of my life until I started studying these statistics. And when I started to actually think about how much do I actually use my phone, I realized that some of these statistics sounds crazy. And then I'm like, no, that's probably possible, because I'm probably about average on some of these. And so just the amount of mobile phones, the amount of cell phones, according to Statista, the current number of smartphone users in the world today is 6.378 billion people. It's a lot of cell phones. And this means 80% of the world's population owns a smartphone. This figure is up considerably from 2016, when there were only 3.668 billion users. 49% of the year's global population in 2016. 80% of the world's population owns a smartphone. And next week, we're going to see just exactly how many of those people are on social media, and then we allow our kids to be on social media. So think about that. And this is the daily average. I think there's actually a slide up here. This is the daily time spent with media. This isn't necessarily on your smartphones. We're going to get to that. But time spent using the internet, 6 hours and 58 minutes. This is just the average time of internet users, if you see up there, ages 16 to 24, or 16 to 64, by the way. Time spent watching television, broadcast and streaming, 3 hours. Time spent using social media, 2 hours and 27 minutes. Time spent reading press media, 2 hours. That's a long time to read press media. Time spent listening to music streaming services, 1 hour and 35 minutes. Time spent listening to broadcast radio, an hour. Time spent listening to podcasts, 57 minutes. Time spent playing video games on a game console, 1 hour and 13 minutes. That's averages. How crazy is that? Like, put yourself, where do you fall in that? Teenager, where do you fall in that? Now let's break that down, how much the internet is being used just on mobile phones. So that's your next screen. This is the share of web traffic on device. Each device share total web pages that's served to web browsers. So this is just what people are looking at on their web browsers. This does not include apps, and this does not include social media. And if you look, what I want you to get on this is mobile phones. 54% of people get on the internet on their mobile phone. That's up 8% from last September of 2020. 8%, and it's going to keep rising. More and more people just use their phones for everyday use with internet. Now, keep in mind, they didn't put in social media or gaming or anything like that. I'm guessing that that's going to go up. But I do want you to look at the other devices all the way at the end, and it has a little gaming thing. I want to remind you, parents. I've talked to several parents, and they seem to forget this. I want to warn you, your kids on their gaming system, their PlayStation 4 or 5, Xbox, they can access the internet and just about anything they want as well. So if you take their phone away and there's still a device in the room, be careful. You might want to have those parental controls on. So next, let's talk about just smartphones by the numbers. So this is where it started getting very convicting for me. Because I read through these, I just truly, I've realized how much I use my phone. So if any of you are feeling convicted, you can just come join me because I'm right there with you. Smartphone usage by the numbers. 160 numbers of times Americans open their phones daily. 160 times. 4 hours and 10 minutes is the average of daily time spent by users on their smartphones. This one I thought was crazy, once again, until I started tracking it. 2,617 is the number of smartphone swipe taps or clicks per day. That is crazy to me. That's how many times we touch our phones. 2,000, that's on average. They say the top 10% of users click their phones 5,427 times a day. Now, once again, you might be sitting there and be like, there's no way. But maybe, you're way better than me. But if you just start realizing from the time you wake up and grab your phone to the time you go to bed, how many times you touch your phone, there's a reason my fingerprints are all over my screen, because I touch it all the time. 43% of users unlock their phones between 51 and 100 times daily. The typical smartphone user checks their smartphone every 12 minutes. For young people below the age of 21, they check their phones every 8.6 minutes. Now, as I go through some of these stats, some of them are on your sheet and some of the other ones I just didn't put on there, but just think about how much you use your phone if those are the statistics for averages. Somewhere along the line, smartphones have become not only part of our everyday life, but they're something we're addicted to. They're something that we use so often we don't even think about it. I know that's the case for me. And for sure, our teens are using their phones more and more and more. I mean, just think about walking around. How many people, especially younger people, if you go to the mall or you go wherever and you're walking around, you're in public, how many kids do you see like this? How many kids do you see talking to their friends like this? I mean, you got like 4 of your friends with you and you're like this. Like, there's real live people beside you. Talk to them. How many kids do you see with their earbuds in, just walking down? The new thing is one earbud in one and one ear, one and not in the other one. So that way I can hear what I'm hearing and hear you at the same time. Like, how's that work? But this is the reality. This is how much we use our phones. And continuing on with more statistics, 87% of users check their smartphone within 1 hour before going to sleep and after waking up. Moreover, 69% of users do so within 5 minutes. I'm probably in the 5 minute, by the way. Meanwhile, 66% of users sleep with their smartphones. I do not sleep with my smartphone. It's pretty close, but I don't actually physically sleep with it. 72% of teens check their phone messages and notifications the moment they wake up. 86% of users check their phones even if they are talking to friends and family. This is another one. Honestly, I can be bad at this. When's the last time you went to dinner without checking your phone? When's the last time you went to lunch with a friend or were hanging out with a friend and you didn't check your phone? Last time you spent an hour with somebody, an hour with your spouse and didn't check your phone, an hour with your kids, didn't check your phone. I mean, when you really start to think about it, it becomes kind of convicting, but this is the reality of how smartphones have just become a natural part of our life, and we're just looking at it all the time. And as a youth counselor, there's a lot of times, a teen doesn't even put their phone down. Some of our teens don't even put their phone down. It's just always there. It's like, seriously, they're talking. It's just like, I'm going to miss something. It's all the time. Statistics when it comes to school, it says 45% of teens admit they are constantly online. This includes the time that they are in class. All these stats are from 2019. I spent some time the other day trying to find updated stats. You know what I realized? There's no updated stats on teens in school and any of these things. I think the reason is because the pandemic hit, and that's all our kids are doing is on their phones. There's no updated stats on this. Moreover, smartphone usage statistics show that students spend about 20% of their time in class texting and checking social media. Students who don't use smartphones wrote 62% more information in their notes. Imagine if you didn't have a smartphone, you might actually pay attention, high schooler. Might get better grades. Smartphone might be a problem. As such, 76% of teachers believe smartphones are distracting students in class. I talked to a teacher, he's a high school teacher, and said more and more we're just less strict on what we allow kids to do in the classroom. They're allowed to have smartphones. He's like, and I can't really do anything about it, and it drives me crazy. This is just the world that we're living in. A site called Common Sense Media did a study comparing things from 2015 to 2019. So keep in mind, these are pre-pandemic numbers. Teens spend an average of 7 hours and 22 minutes on their phones a day. And tweens, ages 8 to 12, are not far behind, at 4 hours and 44 minutes daily, according to a new report by Common Sense Media. 7 hours and 22 minutes. Kids 8 to 12, 4 hours and 44 minutes. You don't think that if your kids are looking at their phone that much, Satan can't influence them? This amount of screen time does not include time spent on schoolwork, according to the report. When figuring out activities, such as reading books and listening to music, the number jumped to 9 hours and 49 minutes for teens and 5 hours and 54 minutes for tweens, or 8 to 12 kids. 56% of parents who have kids ages 8 to 12 purchase mobile phones for them, which is a crazy stat for me once again. The majority of young people seem to be getting smartphones much earlier as well. By age 11, 53% of kids have their own smartphone. By age 11, 53% of kids have their own smartphone. By age 12, 69% of them do, an increase from 41% in 2015. I saw a Consumer Report article, and this was from 2012. It says 6 in 10 kids between the ages 8 and 12 have a phone. Once again, I'm not here to tell you when to have, give your kid a phone, but man, I'll say this. It's more and more dangerous to give your kid a cell phone. To just let them walk around. The average for tweens is over 5 hours. 5 hours. We have a kid, he's a friend of my son. I won't give you his name, but he's on the basketball team, and my wife took him to practice one day, and they were driving back, and he had his cell phone out. He's just cruising through, cell phone, and he's like, "Oh, you don't have a cell phone?" And Mike is like, "No, my parents won't let me get one." I'm like, "Nope. Let me saying that for a while, son." And so he was going through, and Mike said, "Oh, we watch Dude Perfect on YouTube." And you know what the kid says? He's like, "I don't watch YouTube. I'm on TikTok." Well, we're going to see next week. TikTok's not the greatest place for your 11-year-old to be. And so Casey said, she was kind of interested. She says, "So, what else do you do on your phone?" "I listen to music." "What do you listen to?" Because we go through all those statistics, and they're shocking. They really are. Like, there's so many more statistics that I wanted to put on here, but I knew I wouldn't have time. But my goodness, guys, if it's not apparent that our smartphones are a problem, I don't know how you can read through those statistics and not realize it. And I know for me, like I said, and I've said it before, you're not alone. Like, I'm there. I've been there. I've been convicted. I have to find a way to put my smartphone down more. I've got a plan for 2022. I don't make New Year's resolutions. I never do. I actually made one this year. It's to figure out how to limit this. And I'm going to do it. Because I have to do it for my family. I have to do it for my kids. I have to do it for the kids in Ignite. Like, I got to figure out how to do it. I can't come up here and scream at them and then me not do it. It's just not going to be able to be doable. But there's a lot of unwanted results of the smartphones. And the first one is addiction. And we'll talk about this more, so I'm not going to jump into this too much, but they now have a term for someone who is addicted to their phone. It's called nomophobia. This term, nomophobia, or no mobile phone phobia, is used to describe a physical condition when people have a fear of being detached from mobile phone connectivity. Possible symptoms of nomophobia is emotionally, they worry, fear, or panic. There's anxiety, panic or anxiety that you're not going to find your phone. Irritation, stress, and anxiety when you can't check your phone. Physically, there's tightness in your chest, trouble breathing, trembling, increased sweating, feeling faint, rapid heartbeat. Now, you read through that and you're thinking that's crazy. But when's the last time you forgot your phone as you're driving to work or going to school, and what was your first thought? I forgot my phone this morning. And my first thought was, oh my goodness, I had to rush back in and get my phone. I had to unlock the door. I was running late. But you know what I did? I still ran back for my phone. I'm going to be there in a few hours, but I still had to go back for my phone. A while back, I realized almost all the way to work, I forgot my phone. You know what I did? Oh, what if Casey calls? What if there's an emergency? I have a phone on my desk. I can actually text off my computer. I turned around and went home and got it. What happens when you forget your phone? These symptoms feel so funny. Like, well, that's not possible. Until you realize that if you don't have your phone, you're like, It's kind of crazy. One study showed that a smartphone addiction survey revealed that 99% of users show some level of fear and anxiety if they accidentally leave their phones. Of the 99%, 37 have mild symptoms of nomophobia, 50% have moderate symptoms, and 13% have severe symptoms. 89% of college students have moderate or severe nomophobia. 66% of adults have nomophobia. Nomophobia users are 10.3 times more likely to use their phones in prohibited spaces. They are 14 times more likely to be at risk of danger due to smartphone use. These scenarios include driving and crossing the road. Now, I'm sure no one here has ever used their phone driving or texted while driving. So I'm sure it's nobody in here. But there's a lot of people who have an addiction to their phone. And a lot of people probably don't even realize it. And so the next thing that we're going to talk about is, because of the addiction to your phone, because of all the fact that you use it so much, and because of what people are looking at on their phones, it's causing depression. Studies show teens who spend 5 hours daily on their phone devices are 71% more likely to develop risk factors for suicide compared to those who only use the devices for an hour. Remember the stats we just read from 2019? How much our kids are on their phone? Imagine that 11-year-old kid I told you about who spent countless hours on his phone. I bet he fits the description of the average user, maybe more. Imagine all the stuff he sees. Imagine all the stuff he's looking at. Imagine all of that stuff. All the stuff that God never created him to see. All the stuff that the world is just throwing at him. How do you think that affects his heart and mind? How do you think it affects the heart and minds of our kids whenever they're on social media and they're watching all these stupid influencers? Sorry. I don't know if I can say stupid in front of adults, but all these influencers who are, they take their pictures and they look perfect, but you don't realize it was their 100th picture. They did a makeup set before that. They got all this amazing stuff, and our kids just want that. I just want to be like that person. You don't actually see it. Remember, Satan's not showing you the behind the scenes. You don't get to see their life's a mess. But our kids aren't content because they see everything the world has to offer. That kid wasn't created to see everything. He's not created to listen to XXX whatever. He's just not. On top of that, kids spend all their time on phones. You know what? They're lacking social interaction. They're not having the interaction that they're supposed to be having. We were not designed to be alone. We were designed to be able to interact with people. That's why God's given us the church. But you know what? People just don't talk to people anymore. Studies find that teens are not socializing like they used to, and they're more and more isolated than ever. I could have given you statistics on that just for this whole class. As a result, kids are becoming more and more unhappy. Turns out smartphones won't make you happier. Suicides in teens have increased since 2012, and the use of smartphones is one reason the experts are pointing to. All these factors start to play in. It's just like a big hot mess of, you just jump in. And kids are experiencing it every single day. So kids are hearing things they're not supposed to hear. They're seeing things they're not supposed to hear. They're being distant and they're isolating themselves. And then that one statistic where 80% of teens stay up past bed, you know what? They're not sleeping. So you mix all that together, and if that wasn't enough, you throw in a little bit of social media and the craziness that goes on there, and you know what happens? You've got a bunch of teens who are depressed. And we wonder why. Well, why is my kid not happy? Why is he not content? Well, he's depressed. He's always on his phone. I mean, crazy thing. Like I said, when I get stressed out, it's usually when I'm looking on social media. You know when I'm not depressed? When I'm reading God's Word. When I'm interacting with my friends. When I'm interacting with my family. When I'm doing what God's called me to do. That's not when I'm depressed. That's not when I'm frustrated. That's not when I get anxious. It's whenever I let this thing creep into my world. And listen, I'm not even looking at like porn or anything like that. I'm just looking at Facebook. Reading Matt Walsh. Ben Shapiro, whatever his name is. And the anxiety just kicks in. Oh, maybe the conspiracy theories are true. I don't know. But you know what? Our kids don't know to get away from it. That's the problem. Our kids are addicted to it, and they don't know how to get away from it. Parents, that's your job. You need to help them. You need to help them get away from it. You need to help them rein them in. You need to teach them the dangers. And the last problem is just a simple lack of social skills. Kids just don't know how to talk anymore. It's hard to have conversations with kids. You got kids, you come in and it's like, hey man, how you doing? Maybe you're a new person in Ignite and they got their earbuds in. What do? Yell at the kid you just met? Get your stinking earbuds out? I mean, it's kind of one of those catch-22s. It's like, well, I don't really want you to have your earbuds in, but I've never met you before. So what do? Like I said, kids are walking around. They always have their phones in. They're always connected to their phone somehow. And they don't know how to have a simple conversations. Employers are finding that it's harder and harder to have interviews with younger people. They don't know how to talk to you. They don't know eye contact. You know what the studies have found? That kids don't understand how to read emotions. They don't know emotional cues. You don't get that from text. The emojis don't help you. You don't get any of that. You don't know how to read people. That's hard for me. I'm very sarcastic. None of the kids get it now. It's a hard thing for me. But it's sad because kids just don't understand it as much anymore. We need to get back to the point where we're not addicted to our phones, where our kids aren't addicted to phones, and we need to help our kids detach from all this. We're not doing them a service by just handing them a phone and walking away. We're drawing them into a world that Satan's saying, this is great because this is my plan. We're drawing them into a world where there's addiction, where there's depression, and where they're not learning just basic social skills that we as adults have probably learned because we had to. Now let's look at some solutions. So there is some solutions, and they're very simple. And we're not going to take very long at this because I know we're running out of time, but parents, there's some simple solutions. Now when I say there's simple solutions, they're simple to do, or they're simple to try to put into place, they're going to be really hard to do. Because the first one is teach temperance. You've got to teach your kids temperance with cell phones. The Bible, all throughout the Bible, talks about temperance. You got to moderate. You can't just be addicted to your phones. And parents, some of you, it's going to be hard because your kids have been using it for so long. But you're going to have to teach your kids how to put their phones down. You're going to have to teach your kids when to say yes and when to say no to their phones. You're going to have to teach your kid when is a proper time. You know what? We have to get back to the point. I have to get back to the point where I realize a proper time to use your phone is not when I'm with my friends. It's not when I'm at Chipotle eating with my friends. It's just not. We got to start doing this. We got to start teaching our kids, you know what? A phone is not a necessity in life. I made it just fine without a phone for a long time. Many of us made it most of our lives without a phone. Our kids have no idea what it's like not to have a phone, and we need to teach them. Listen, you don't have to be in constant contact or on social media every single day of your life. We need to start to understand how smartphones can affect our kids. Do not bury your head in the sand. I just read a bunch of statistics. There's a lot more stuff out there. Go research it. Understand what the Word of God says. I just talked to simple things about guarding your eyes, guarding your mind, knowing your enemy. There's a lot of other things, simple biblical principles that can apply to all these things. And then whenever you learn them, teach them to your kids. Just start talking to them. It just doesn't work well whenever you tell your kids, listen, don't look at pornography, don't look at social media, don't look at all this. You know why? Because the world is just okay with it. And all their friends are doing it. All their friends are doing it. So when you say don't do it, okay, mom and dad says, well, why not? Understand how the smartphones affect your kids and explain it to them. Next, use the parental controls. Lock your kids down. All the kids in here are thinking, oh no. But lock your kids down. We're going to help you with that. We're going to have a class. We're going to talk about some of this stuff. If you need help locking your kids down, there's people like me, there's Craig, there's Corey, there's Wayne Steed, there's Andy Ireland. There's plenty of people who can help you lock any system down. All my gaming systems have codes on them. All my TVs have codes on them. Everything has codes on them. My kids have to ask me before they get on something. Why do they have to ask me? You know what? I know what they're getting on. Hey, Dad, can I watch YouTube? What are you going to watch? Because you're allowed to watch Dude Perfect. That's it. That's what you're allowed to watch. Now, they watch other things because we'll talk about YouTube, but it kind of goes in different directions pretty quickly. But lock your kids down. It's really hard to look at pornography whenever they can't. It's hard to use a device whenever all of a sudden, oh man, my screen time just got locked down. It's 9 o'clock. I'm not allowed on my phone anymore. You know what? Your kids aren't going to like it, but it's going to help them. And this one is my goal, and it's very hard, but find times in your home where there is no screen time. This might be hard to do, but we need to start setting up times maybe in our homes where there is no smartphone. There is no Xbox. There is no this. There is no that. You know what? This is just family time. At the dinner table, nobody touches technology. For the next hour, nobody touches technology. Silence your phones before bed, adults. You know, maybe you have to, maybe there's emergencies, maybe people call you. You can set your phone up now to only allow certain people to call you. And then other than that, it won't bother you. Turn your notifications off. I did that. It's amazing. When your phone isn't buzzing and to start fighting that addiction. And I pray, Lord, that we just stop giving our kids reasons to hop on their phone. I pray that we start to just fight this battle that Satan is clearly fighting 24/7. Every single day he's fighting it. And Lord, I pray that we begin to fight it as well. And I pray that the kids in the room aren't necessarily going to like it, but I pray that they begin to understand just exactly how important it is to guard our eyes and to guard our mind and to fight against our enemy, Lord. We love you. Just be with Craig as he's getting ready to preach your word. Give him